Okay, this is the second part of a two-part video set that I'm trying to put together for gun safety. And again, I'm going to say this is not me pushing a pro-gun agenda. This is not me encouraging people to go out and buy guns. If that's not what you're into, that's fine by me. That's your right. But I do notice that people who aren't familiar with guns do end up with guns in their hands an awful lot, and bad things happen. We keep hearing about children being shot in the news, and this is just my feeble attempt to put some information out there that may discourage someone from picking up a gun that they're not familiar with. And that's the whole point of these two videos, is simply to show you it's not simple, and it's not something that someone should just on a whim do just because they happen across a handgun. So this is about semi-automatics. So let me explain the basic concept behind what constitutes a semi-automatic. I'll grab the simplest gun here that'll demonstrate exactly what's going on. Semi-automatic describes the action, and the action is simply how the bullets go through the gun, right? It's the mechanism or the mechanics that get the bullet through the gun. So semi-automatics generally are going to have a magazine. This holds the ammunition. That magazine then gets inserted into the gun, and you can see the top of the magazine is sitting right there. So if there was a bullet in that magazine, it would be sitting right there, so that when this slide goes forward, it grabs the bullet and it puts it inside what's called the chamber, that little round cylindrical hole there. Bullet goes in. Let's give you a good view of it. Bullet gets put in there. And now there is a firing pin back here that's spring loaded, and when you pull the trigger, that spring is released and the firing pin strikes the back of the bullet, and the bullet goes out of the barrel. So, and then once that energy from that bullet exploding here, it pushes back on this slide. So the force of the bullet pushes back on the slide comes back, grabs the next bullet in the magazine and slams it into the chamber, ready for you to pull the trigger again. Now, I'm going to get into more detail about that trigger action here in a second. But the next thing, the 3 rules. Guns are always loaded. Finger off the trigger until you're ready to shoot. And number 3, keep it pointed in a safe direction. Don't ever point it at yourself, ever. Don't ever point it at a friend. Don't even point it at somebody you don't like, unless they're attacking you and you're fear for your life and severe bodily harm. Those are the grounds under which you can use a firearm to defend yourself. So other than that, you can always keep it pointed in a safe direction. It's something that you're perfectly willing to destroy. So 3 rules is load it, finger off the trigger, don't point it at anything you don't want to destroy. Always remember those. So as a matter of habit, as you can see, the condition that these guns are in right now, they've been checked, but I like to encourage the good habit of checking guns every time I pick them up, even though I know I've cleared them. So it's just a way of practicing. So let's get on with why people get confused, and because of ignorance, they end up shooting someone or themselves. And I'll start with this guy here. So as we can see, there's no bullet in the chamber. There are no bullets in the magazine. All right. So basically what happens with this gun, and why people get confused, is when they know about this guy. This gun has what's called a takedown lever that just lets you break it down for maintenance and cleaning. It has a slide release so that when that slide locks back, and the slide locks back whenever it runs out of bullets. So if there had been just one bullet in that magazine, you fired it, when it comes back and there's an empty magazine in there, the slide locks back. Okay, just to let you know, it's like the gun telling you I'm out of ammunition. So this little device here, when it locks back and you want to close it, you just press down on it and it closes the slide. Next control, magazine release button. Most of the time you're going to see it here. Sometimes it's here. But in general, when you press that button, magazine pops out of the bottom so that you can put in a freshly loaded one. Good to go. Next control surface, you have what's called the safety. All right, and on most guns, you're either going to have a red dot or you're going to have a red letter F telling you that the gun is in ready to fire mode. Red is dead. So this particular one is not in safe because the red dot is showing. And what's excellent about this gun is if I pull down on that, it decocks the hammer. So if you watch the other video, and I encourage you to do that, I showed you what's called the difference between single action and double action. That still applies to a semi-automatic gun. This gun will fire in single action. Single action is when you pull the hammer back manually yourself. It cocks, and now it takes pressure off of the trigger and makes the trigger easier to pull, and that's single action right there. Double action is where the trigger does both. By pulling the trigger, it cocks the hammer, and then it releases the hammer. So it did two things, hence double action. So this gun would shoot in both double action and single action modes. And typically, if it didn't have that decocker feature that drops the hammer for you, okay? And this particular one, when it's in safe mode, remember red dot's not showing, so it's in safe, it won't even let you hold the hammer back. And even if you pull the hammer back and let it go, it's got a blocker in there that keeps that from striking that firing pin. So that safety is doing a lot for you. Now, okay, put it on there, decock, because without that decocker, the way that you would have to uncock this gun is to hold it with your thumb, and some people like to do it with two hands. And while you're holding it with this thumb, you press the trigger and then you slowly let the hammer down. So they thought it was a good idea to come here and put in an automatic decocker, because some people were doing this. They'd have the hammer back. They'd go to drop the hammer and then they'd accidentally let it slip. Boom. That's the same as pulling the trigger. So they'd have the hammer back. They'd try to do it manually by pulling the trigger and then slowly letting it down, then it would slip and they'd fire the gun. So this particular manufacturer thought it would be a good idea to put a decocker on the gun. So this thing is full of features, and you can see all of these control surfaces, all of these things that you can do to change the operation or change the configuration of the gun, and it's a great idea. This is a great piece of engineering, and you even got control surfaces on the opposite side. So this is ambidextrous, meaning you can control the safety function on both sides of the gun, left-handed or right-handed. So someone knows about this gun, and then they go ahead and they pick up this one. Magazine's empty. There's nothing in the chamber. They pick this gun up, and they see all those control surfaces. Look at that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You got all those control surfaces, nearly as many as that guy. In fact, exactly the same number as that other gun. And their assumption is that this gun has a safety. This gun does not have a safety. Even though it's got a decocker, it's got a slide release, okay? It's got the same stuff as the other one, but it just doesn't have a safety. So if you pick this gun up and you're thinking you're holding that other one, and you get careless and you stop following those 3 rules and you end up pointing it at someone and you assume it's not loaded, and you go ahead and you say you do that, all right? Now you're thinking you put that in safe mode. Well, guess what? It still fires in double action mode. It still fires in single action mode because it does not have a safety. So that little bit of ignorance gets a lot of people shot and killed by accident, because they think they're dealing with one gun, this guy over here that has a safety, and they're really dealing with this gun because they're not familiar with how it works. So let's say you do know about those two, and then you go ahead and you pick this gun up. And well, let me go to here first. This particular one, check it, has fewer control surfaces, or appears to have fewer. You're looking at it and you're thinking, well, it doesn't have all of the control surfaces of those other two. But in actuality, it has some control surfaces that do multiple things. Like in this one, it doesn't have an individual takedown lever. The takedown and the slide release are the same component. It doesn't have an independent decocker because the safety acts as the decocker and the safety. When it's in safe mode, same, it will let you cock the hammer though. That's different from that gun. This one here wouldn't let you cock the hammer, neither would this one. With it in safe mode, this one will let you leave the hammer back while in safe mode. That tricks people because they think, hey, they may not notice that hammer's back, but they just look here and say, well, it's in safe. See, there's the red F for fire. It's in safe, so no big deal. They'll mess around and get that thing knocked off safety because there's not a lot of movement there. And some people might even have trouble seeing the difference. Ends up in fire mode. Well, this gun is ready to fire. And this is a double action and single action gun. And if you get confused and you pull down on it instead of lift up, well, pulling down puts it into fire mode. Pulling it down does decock it, but you can still fire the gun. So you can see how someone can get confused with all those different features between just those three and end up shooting someone. This model here, gun's empty, nothing in the chamber. Same thing, a dual purpose breakdown tool or takedown lever and slide release. Safety. What's missing? No red dot, no red letters telling you what's safe and what's not. So if you're not familiar and you don't understand that up means safe, down means fire, you may not know whether or not this gun is in safe mode or not. You're in trouble if you pull this trigger. Okay? And that's about the only thing that's really different from this model and the others, except for you're looking at the first example that I've shown you of a gun that is a single action mode only. This gun, when the hammer is down, will not fire. This gun will not fire until that hammer is pulled back, and then you pull the trigger. The other thing that's different about this gun, it has what's called a thumb safety. If that thumb safety isn't depressed, like that, this gun will not fire. I'll prove it. Pull the hammer back. I'm not pressing the thumb safety. This gun will not fire. Okay? Now, if you're familiar with this guy and you think, hey, as long as I don't have that pressed down, I can pull this all I want to. Okay? Or if you're not familiar with that feature and you accidentally pull it down and boom, you need to know how that works and how it's built into the function of the gun. And the reason I'll show you that one is because of this next gun. This next one, again, it's empty. Has a takedown lever, but that is not the slide release. This is the slide release here. There's a magazine release. It does not have a decocker. It does not have a safety. It doesn't even have a hammer. This, you see that little pin that's sticking out there? This is called a striker fired gun. And the striker fired guns rely on a spring-loaded system. Typically, they're going to be single action only, meaning they have to be cocked. That's the only way you can cock it, is by pulling that back. That cocks the pin, and then watch what happens to the pin when I pull the trigger. It goes in and hits the bullet and fires the bullet. This doesn't have a safety. What it does have is a hammer or thumb safety right there, and it has a trigger safety. See that little lever? Both of those have to be pressed before that trigger will fire the gun. And I'll show you. All right, I just cocked it. I'm going to push that in, but I'm not going to push in the trigger lever, and it won't fire. If I let that one go and I press that one in, it won't fire. So it wants you to have your hand all the way in there before it'll fire the gun. If you're familiar with this guy and you think you're dealing with this guy and you pick up this next one, it doesn't have a thumb safety. It has a trigger safety though. But if you're thinking, well, as long as I don't put that in my hand and I do this, empty. Go ahead and cock it for the effect. And you pull that lever back, this gun will fire. It's a single action mode, striker fired, and it doesn't even have a pin back there to let you know if it's been cocked or not, like the other gun did. So basically, I'm just trying to show you that if you don't know what you're dealing with, you can easily get yourself hurt. Hope this is helpful. Thanks.